brain. Talking a little bit, but singing, yes, different bodies click.
Yeah.
Penguin is a small town on the north coast of Tasmania that looks out to the Bass Strait. It's a really beautiful little tourist town. Not a lot going on, but it's the simple things done right. Beautiful oceans, and sits right beside Burnie. The penguins don't actually go to Penguin, they go everywhere around it. So recently I went to Penguin to visit my family, particularly my cousin Christian, who a few years ago was actually the victim of a pretty serious assault that left him with permanent brain injury. So since that injury and his ongoing recovery, Christian has lost the ability to write, to speak, and he's also a hemiplegic, so he's lost mobility in much of his right side. He also has some other side effects, I guess, which include the inability to feel pain properly. And he also can't actually regulate his body temperature. So he doesn't really feel the cold at all. You know, he'll be walking around Penguin in shorts and a Hawaiian shirt when it's 9 degrees outside. So you'll be sitting at a table with Christian speaking, and he'll be listening intently, but he doesn't have necessarily the means to be able to speak back in real time or without great concentration. So what he'll do instead is sing.
There'll be no more stopping when he starts dropping his own sweet song.
And he'll sing songs that he remembers from well before the accident in his kind of pre-teens era, which makes for some really uncanny kind of conversations, but also gives a lot of character to them as well.
What you don't understand is I got a name for you.
So as you can imagine, music therapy is really important for Christian, and he visits a clinic each week called Creative Therapies Tasmania, which is located in Devonport, not too far away from Penguin. And him and his music therapist, Alex, they meet once a week, and they essentially have a long Spotify playlist, which is all the songs that Christian kind of remembers from before the accident. And when you watch the practice, it is a little bit like magic. You know, you've just spent hours speaking with Christian without him really being able to say much. But as soon as he steps into this room, you can tell his confidence lifts and he feels much more in command of the space. So the practice itself involves Christian standing directly opposite Alex, and they're essentially singing directly at each other, which is a really intimate, kind of beautiful thing to watch, just with how much earnestness there is to it and how meaningful it clearly is to him. You know, he's suddenly in a space where he can communicate with someone in real time. So while I was at Creative Therapies Tasmania, I was speaking to Christian's music therapist, Alex, about the business and about Creative Therapies Tasmania, and she was telling me that it's under threat, like a lot of other music therapy practices around the country. And that's because the NDIS a few months ago basically revealed that they're going to be pulling a lot of the funding for music therapy, which would have a devastating impact on the industry because patients are no longer going to be able to afford the practice. So when the NDIS announced these cuts, there was very immediately a huge pushback, and that's not just from clinicians and that's not just from patients, but it's also from the wider public. There are over 60,000 signatures on a petition supporting music therapy as an evidence-based practice. Because of the weight of the pushback, the NDIA essentially did do a little bit of a 180 and decide that they would be conducting their own review into the practice, and that report is due mid-March. And essentially the whole industry hangs in the balance of this report, and that's not just for Alex, that's not just for Christian, but that's also for the entire art therapy industry.
Easy come, easy go, that's just how you live. Oh, take it all, but you never give. Should've known you was trouble from the first kiss. Had your